Okay, so in this video, I want to talk about porn and shame and how closely the two things are linked together and how challenging it can be to deal with. And I want to talk about this through a personal story of mine. And this was a time when I was trying to quit watching. I kind of knew it wasn't good for me. I didn't know to what extent, but I knew I wanted to stop. I knew I wanted to try and get control of it. But I'd been falling in and out of the habit for a while now, going maybe 2 weeks. I'm back in, not doing very well. But then at this time, I ended up watching a documentary. And this documentary is basically about how kind of young women were getting recruited into this industry. They were kind of being lured to Miami with the promise of money, lifestyle. And it followed, a handful of women, but this one woman in particular. And she goes down there and, I don't think she had a boyfriend, she seemingly had like a supporting family, but I don't think they knew about what she was doing. And she goes down there and, for the first month or so, roughly, it was okay. I mean, obviously, like she knew what she was getting herself into to a degree. And it was kind of what she expected, I think. But then eventually, she stopped being asked to do the more, let's say, normal videos. The exact reason I don't remember, but I think it was some kind of combination of, the people in charge thinking that she wasn't attractive enough, or maybe like even the viewing numbers for her, let's say, weren't good enough. And so eventually they stopped giving her the normal gigs, and she was suddenly, to be able to get work and support herself, she had to do the more extreme stuff. And you can probably imagine the kind of things that those were, but these, this is like now like quite a long way beyond normal sex, right? And and I'm watching this, and I'm like, and that's the thing with the documentary is, and what's so powerful about it is, because I think in general we all know that we kind of understand that it's still technically there's real people behind what you're watching, but you don't really think about it. And even when you see statistics, you're like, whoa, that's kind of crazy. But then it's it doesn't connect you to that empathy. But what happens with a documentary, when you follow one person's story in particular, like you see their emotions and you start to connect with them, and it becomes way more powerful. And that's what I felt in this case. Like I saw her story, and you could see like the struggles she was going through, and they kind of hinted at the kind of things that she was having to film, and like how it wasn't what she wanted really, and that the realization that she'd gone on this journey that she couldn't really go back from now, and like telling her family, and she had this boyfriend, and the struggles around that, and it just really shone a light on how these are real people behind this, having to do these things. And of course, like they're making choices, but I still just thought like, this is not something that I actually want to be a part of. Like I don't want to be supporting this. And because through the documentary, I felt that so viscerally. I felt very determined in that moment, like, right, I'm done, I'm quitting, that's that. I'm not going to watch this. And that was the case for about 6 weeks. And then, eventually the stresses of life or whatever caught up with me. And then I was back in watching. And then again, once I'd watched once, it was like, well, I might as well watch now. And I was just, back on the hamster wheel, back in the cycle. But the negative feeling, the feeling of shame that I felt then was enormous. Because I'd seen it so clearly, and I'd made this commitment to myself, and I'd seen that like, this is something I don't want to support. I do not want to be a part of this. And then I was back watching it again. And like, it was such a low point for me, thinking, well, so even though I know that, and like, here I am, like, just having lied to myself, what's wrong with me? And how weak am I? I'm such like a contradiction, and maybe I'm never going to be able to get out of this. Like, these are all the things I was thinking. And then what's then so difficult about that, and with shame, is obviously shame is probably it's one of, if not the kind of worst negative emotion, because of like how heavy that makes you feel. And so when you experience negative emotions, what does that make you do? It makes you want to escape them. And typically, if you're watching a lot of that stuff, what do you use to escape the negative emotions? It's porn. And so then the feeling of more shame made me want to watch even more. So then you watch, which adds even more shame, because you know that it's not what you want to do, it's not in line with your values, but then you're doing it anyway. So just this like really nasty cycle of shame, and it just left me in this really quite desperate place with low energy and low self-esteem. And because of course, when you consistently take actions that are against your values as a human being, right, that it chips away at your self-esteem, it chips away at your confidence, and that's why it affects confidence. But you don't really realize that in the moment, but you just sort of think, oh, I'm just tired, but it's like just slowly eating away at you. This is to me, that story is exactly like a New Year's resolution type story. You know, you get very motivated to do something like, right, I'm going to do this. This is it. I'm going to, work out every day for this year. But those decisions are made purely based on emotions and motivation in the moment. But of course, that's going to change, because what you're doing is you're relying on willpower. You're relying on mental strength, and you don't feel good every day of the year. And also some days, like, maybe urges come stronger, or that little voice in your head is going to get to you more easily, unless you're tired or you're hungover, or a bunch of other things go wrong. So you're like, well, screw it, who cares anymore? It's like, burn everything. So, and eventually those attitudes will come. So, so what's the difference? What's the problem there? And what can you do differently? Well, you have to understand the bigger picture. Yes, seeing the reality of that industry and like how it is real people having to actually do those things, and there's even stuff that's like well within the law. It's still like, do I really want to support this? And obviously that it leads quite naturally into stuff that's like just shouldn't be happening. So it's like it can be quite easy to recognize that you don't want to support that, but you need something bigger, because, as I say, the energy will fade, or you'll just suddenly, after a bit of time, you'll become less clear on it. So you have to be absolutely clear on why you're doing it, and that why has to be something for you, and I think that has to be about your personal growth and development as a human. So it kind of like sits on top of everything. So you have to see that clearly. And you also have to strip away a lot of the illusions. Like, I still believe that, yes, even though I didn't agree with that, I didn't necessarily want to be supporting it, I still felt like it could give me something. Like, there was some value to be had in it. The excitement, the pleasure, the escape, those things is where I saw value in it. So even though I didn't want to be watching it, I didn't want to completely give it up. And I think that language is important as well. Like, that's how I was feeling. I was having to give something up. But the reality is you're not giving anything up, because you're not gaining anything from it. So then the other big step is seeing the illusion, realizing that it's not real pleasure, or that pleasure is very different to enjoyment. And that pleasure in the moment that immediately turns to shame isn't worth anything. There is no value in that. And so once that's clear, like, there's no value in this. And then you can also start to recognize, like, the voice in your head, and be ready for that. Because again, those thoughts are always going to come. There's always going to be that little voice like, oh, but what if? And if you're not ready for that, and if you don't understand that that's just the way the mind works, and these thoughts just pop up because that's the way our brain developed, and we almost do have this monkey brain just in the center of our heads. If you don't understand that and you're not ready for it, you start to believe that that's you, so then you get pulled into these thoughts. And then also you just have to make a final commitment. It's not about controlling it, it's about stepping away, because otherwise the habits will always return, and by trying to control it, you're also keeping it alive. You're keeping the sense of reward alive in your mind, that it's, oh, well, eventually I'll come back to this and it'll be great. So then again, your inner voice is like, well, if we're going to go back to it eventually, I might as well just go back to it right now. And that's how it pulls you in. So you have to make that final commitment. I'm just here to just say finally, like, if you do those things, it's way, way, way easier to quit than you think it is, but it's just thinking about it in the wrong way. I spent 6 to 8 years really thinking about this in the wrong way, and I finally figured all of that out, and I've put that into a short video course to make all these points clear, and so that you can quit definitely, without shame, without willpower, without fighting yourself. And that's what's amazing about this, is that this is a great thing, because you don't need to be fighting yourself. Doing anything on willpower is really hard, but once you make the commitment, it becomes easy, and it's not difficult, and you actually don't have these withdrawal symptoms that we think might be there. And so, yeah, the link is in the bio. So please check that out. And yeah, I understand how you feel. I've been living in that shame for so long, but now that I'm on the other side of it, everything is just so much better. And I'm here to say that it's a lot easier than you think it is.